In the summer of 2004, with Saverin remaining on the East Coast, Zuckerberg left Harvard.
We came out to Palo Alto for the summer just to hang out, because Palo Alto is kind of this mythical place where, all the startups come from, and got ready to launch at another 150 schools when the year started.
One of the things that Mark did that was very smart by going to Palo Alto was to actually enter the petri dish of entrepreneurialism, particularly for new technologies.
Zuckerberg and his friends moved into a large frame house with a swimming pool, and he reconnected with Sean Parker, who later became Zuckerberg's roommate.
He was the adult supervision. He's the guy who showed them how things are done in Silicon Valley. He's the one who showed them how to meet investors, how to negotiate with them, who to hire.
Mark has told me stories of just all of the guys coding late at night around dining room tables and eating chicken McNuggets and cereal.
And there's partying going on. Sean Parker is bringing them around to the different kind of cool Silicon Valley hotspots. And meanwhile, the website is growing astronomically fast. I mean, there's a 1 million member party by December of that year.
During this time, Parker gave Zuckerberg some shrewd advice he took to heart.
He sort of looked at him and said, you need to be the founder of this thing, and you need to be the CEO forever. You can't turn this over to investors.
And Mark is able to negotiate a series of increasingly important investment deals that do two things. One, allow him enough operating cash to hire some of the smartest engineers in the business, and two, help him retain majority control in the company.
But tensions began to grow with Zuckerberg's original partner, Eduardo Saverin, who remained on the East Coast.
Eduardo felt that, he was the business head of the company and he was no longer being treated that way. Mark and Sean were taking meetings all over California. They were meeting with venture capitalists, and they were kind of ignoring Eduardo.
He retaliated.
Eduardo froze the bank accounts to try and get Mark's attention, and Mark and Sean began to sort of figure out a way to build the company without Eduardo.
Zuckerberg responded and froze Saverin out.
Eduardo was removed from the company masthead, and he essentially became a non-entity. He became a non-person. He was thrown out.
Facebook had 1 million active users on college campuses nationwide, and big money was starting to pour in. Sean Parker, the new president of Facebook, introduced Zuckerberg to Silicon Valley angel investor Peter Thiel, who put $500,000 into the company. Then, in the spring of 2005, the venture capital firm Accel Partners offered Zuckerberg $12.7 million for an 11% stake in the company.
And didn't ask for much control at all. Walking away from that investment, Mark controlled 3 out of 5 board seats.
Which is a bizarre and unprecedented situation to have one individual have absolute, effectively dictatorial control over the disposition and direction of an increasingly giant company.
Overnight, the Accel investment gave Facebook a valuation of $100 million. As Facebook's public profile grew, so did Zuckerberg's control. This time, Sean Parker was edged out. In August of 2005, Parker was arrested for suspicion of cocaine possession. Although not formally charged with a crime and immediately released, it led to his abrupt resignation as president of Facebook.
He was the primary outside face of the company, and it was felt that somebody who was under any kind of a cloud with drugs was not the right guy to be the public face of Facebook. So Mark reluctantly agreed that he ought to leave.
Facebook was growing with remarkable speed, and Zuckerberg moved the company from its frat-like house with a pool to a larger and more conventional space in downtown Palo Alto.
2, 3, 4, 5,
but the college atmosphere remained the same.
One of the things that I do focus on at Facebook is making sure that the culture is very friendly, and that people hang out. In terms of managing this whole process, nothing, nothing. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing,
Even their employee interviews were different. Chris Kelly was brought on in the new position of Chief Privacy Officer to deal with Facebook's increasingly contentious privacy issues, at a time when the entire company numbered only a couple dozen employees.
The first time I met Mark, we climbed out on the roof, out through the window,
and did our interview on the roof of what was then a World Wraps. And it was clear he was young, but he had a very sophisticated understanding of what had happened so far and where he wanted to take the company.
Determined to keep Facebook's unusual creative culture alive, all-night hackathons were one way to do it.
We have these hackathons at the company, right, where basically everyone gets together and just hacks on something and builds something all night long. And the only rule is that you aren't allowed to work on at a hackathon what you work on the rest of the time. So people work on crazy stuff.
Hackathons were some of the most kind of creative focus that you could ever imagine in a company. Imagining these incredibly talented engineers coming together for a night and saying, we're going to stay up all night and we're just going to program. And we're going to pick a project and we're going to get it done that night.
It's like, great, make it. We'll prototype it. And there'll be a prototype war and see who wins. It can be a contentious environment.
Bull, man, they wouldn't be able to get all the way across. No, I disagree. That's bull. We had an argument.
From Mark's point of view, this is where good ideas come from quickly and efficiently.
Good ideas were flowing. Zuckerberg then made a change that would give Facebook a sudden and dramatic boost, allowing people to identify or tag themselves and their friends in photographs.
That was a huge, huge change that led to massive new use of Facebook, and photos became very rapidly by far the most used part of Facebook and became the single biggest driver of its growth.
That growth continued in one direction, up. According to Facebook's internal tracking, its user base had shot to 5.5 million users in less than 2 years. And media giants were banging on the door. In 2006, Yahoo baited the 22-year-old Zuckerberg with an extraordinary offer, a buyout for $1 billion. Even more extraordinary, Zuckerberg turned them down.
Now, if you are a parent of someone about Mark's age, you're looking at the Yahoo decision and thinking, why did you not take that money?
It's never been about money. If it was, it would have just sold out.
We just felt that doing that and going down that path would not help us build Facebook out.
In 2006, Mark Zuckerberg rejected a $1 billion pitch from Yahoo when MTV pushed the ante even higher. Michael J. Wolf was CEO of MTV Networks.
Mark had taken me on a walk around Palo Alto and shown me his apartment. And afterwards, we sat down for lunch, and I told him we'd be willing to pay as much as $1.5 billion to buy Facebook outright. His answer was, I think it's worth a lot more. And besides, you've seen my apartment. I don't really need that kind of money. And at the same time, I may never have an idea as good as this one. So I'm not that interested in selling.
There was internal strife around it, no question. There were a lot of people who wanted to sell. Ultimately, Mark decided to turn down the offers.
Zuckerberg wasn't ready to sell because he had some ideas that he thought would make Facebook even more popular. One of them was called Newsfeed, a kind of real-time wire service of updates about what users were up to.
Newsfeed is what everybody is doing at that point, or what they're posting, what they're linking to, the world that they live in, which is really what a newspaper is, right? It's a living, breathing newspaper of people around you.
But many Facebook users thought that newspaper sent out too much information and violated their privacy. 750,000 of them launched an online protest.
To say that it was unpopular at first is a dramatic understatement. They were under siege at the office. They couldn't leave. They were surrounded by news trucks.
Almost 10% of our user base at the time joined the Students Against Facebook Newsfeed group.
Zuckerberg was forced to apologize.
He wrote his apology note himself. It was probably a good learning experience. When Facebook changed some of the privacy controls, it was an overstep. I do think he takes those seriously, but I do think that he's willing to continue to overstep for the purpose of making a product that he wants to make.
The apology was not a surrender. Zuckerberg was sure that users would get used to this new level of sharing, and he turned out to be right. After tweaking Newsfeed, it became one of the most popular elements of the Facebook experience.
It just happened that the first time I ever met Mark was 2 days after that happened. And I can tell you, even though his members were in open revolt, he was not the slightest bit flustered. He had complete confidence that everything was going to work out all right.
Zuckerberg decided it was time to take Facebook beyond its college roots and introduce it to the general public. The response was stunning. Membership doubled, shooting up to 12 million by 2006. Zuckerberg radically altered the Facebook experience again, when for the first time the 23-year-old CEO invited programmers from around the world to develop apps for Facebook. It was another turning point, expanding Facebook from an insular world of information to a platform.
And it was like the gold rush. You open up this wonderful platform and in comes every kind of developer with every kind of idea, from video sharing to games to things that blinked to things that turned into, ballerinos and hippos and just every kind of fun, wonderful thing.
The platform companies or the operating system companies always do the best. I mean, think of Microsoft. It had this ubiquitous Windows platform, and all these other companies wrote programs for Windows. Facebook's really trying to create itself in that model.
And in 2007, Microsoft itself entered the picture, this time with a deal Zuckerberg couldn't turn down. And for the first time, the world got a glimpse of what Facebook may really be worth.
By the time people were finally getting used to the idea that anyone would pay $1 billion for Facebook, Microsoft comes along and pays $250 million for 1.6% of the company. It was outrageous. It valued the company at $15 billion. This took Facebook from a thing that a lot of people use to a thing that everyone was talking about, the $15 billion company.
But for a $15 billion company, Facebook was only making a meager $30 million in profits. To remedy that, Zuckerberg announced a sweeping new advertising system in the fall of 2007. One part of it let companies set up their own Facebook pages and advertise using social ads. Lou Kerner covers social media and owns shares in Facebook.
Social ads on Facebook are ads where they would say that your friends Meg and Ryan like Virgin America. And it turns out, not surprisingly, that when you see that your friends like a product, you're more likely to click on that ad. So social ads have been very successful on Facebook virtually from the beginning.
But another part of Facebook's new advertising plan, Beacon, gave users far more than they wanted, and they let Zuckerberg know about it.
Zuckerberg's made a lot of mistakes. The next mistake, which was a really big one, was Beacon.
You go to a third-party e-commerce site and you buy something, and unless you tell it not to, really quickly, it's going to go back and tell all your friends that you just bought a diamond engagement ring. And obviously, that sort of secret revealing can cause a lot of trouble.
There was the great rallying cry that Facebook ruined Christmas because suddenly everyone's purchases were being broadcast to their entire network.
Zuckerberg really tried to defend it for a while. It took him a while to realize how wrong it was.
On December 5th, 2007, Zuckerberg made another apology. He had overreached yet again. But as with previous mistakes, it wouldn't really matter. Facebook was just too popular. And it wasn't long before Zuckerberg was loosening up the network's privacy controls one more time.